What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Sailor Turned Gamer, and we are back in the building coming at you with another Dauntless video. With today's Dauntless video, we will be talking about the repeaters. I'm going to be giving you guys some tips, and I'm going to be talking about ways to actually play with the repeaters. There are a lot of new players that are discovering not only the repeaters, but the game as a whole for the very first time, and I've noticed that there are tons, well, I don't want to say tons, there are some players that aren't necessarily properly using the repeaters all the time, and you're missing out on a lot of things like damage or a lot of things like attack speed. And so I'm a guy that makes tons of build videos on the repeaters. They are my main go-to weapon, and I think I have a little bit to offer. So with that, the first thing that I want to talk about is the equipment, because the equipment is a huge deal. If you don't understand the things that are here, then this is the beginning of your downfall. So I've talked about this before in previous videos. One of the most important things you need in order to stay alive and survive and learn and grow and work your way through Dauntless is to know where you're going. And what I mean by that is a loadout, is a build. If you don't have one, at least have an idea of what type of playstyle you want, so you can start getting the pieces to work your way towards it. Now, I know this particular build that I'm showing on the screen right now, you guys probably don't have the pieces for it, but that's not really the point. The point of me showing you this build is to say, hey, this is what I'm going for with my armor and my lantern, but these are the perks that I want to obtain, and I'm going to try to get these by any means necessary. So in a future video, I'm going to be doing a breakdown, and I'm going to be ranking some of the perks in the game as far as which ones are more relevant and more valuable to a repeater player. So stand by for that. But having a loadout, determining a playstyle, is the biggest thing that you can do to prepare yourself for any kind of hunt in general, but especially as a repeater player. I highly suggest you kind of just get a scope of what you want to do. If you're not sure, I'll leave a link in the description box below for my build playlist. I got a couple of repeater builds on there. One of those is more in-game. I have another one that's more mid-game, which is kind of nice. As a starting player, you can go with that mid-game build and save up your resources and work your way towards that. I'm going to come up with an early game repeater build as well, so we got a lot of things coming down the pipeline when it comes to increasing the overall knowledge for the player base for repeaters. Alright, so with the equipment, let's break these things down. Your barrels, you have to know which barrel to use in which hunt, but it's pretty self-explanatory, because once you're in the airship, I'm sure you guys have seen by now, the airship is going to tell you what element the behemoth is going to be weak against, and you just go with that respective barrel. For these chambers, now I will say the marksman's chamber that we have equipped right now, don't use it. It's not that good. It's really something that can be passed up on, and something that really can be skipped, and you wouldn't even really notice it, in all honesty. So when we're talking about what type of chamber to use, I highly suggest you either use Salvos Chamber or full bore chamber. And if you don't have access to full bore chamber, don't feel bad, because Salvos Chamber is amazing. It's really, really good. And for the sole purposes of that, once we dive into the hunt, where I'm going to show you guys some tips, I'm going to use Salvos Chamber. So let's look at our grip. Captain's grip or Saboteur's grip. I'm going to tell you right now, do not go with Saboteur's grip. It's just not worth it overall, in my opinion. I think most of the time you're going to get more value out of the Captain's grip. It's going to give you that 20% increased attack speed. And empowering. Empowering is really, really huge. I'm going to be talking about that a lot. You guys have to get the hand of empowering. Empowering reloads, when you're near a behemoth and you actually reload, your character's going to kind of change up a little bit visually, and they're going to get like a little glow effect that's going to happen on them. And when they do that, you're actually going to be able to increase your damage output by a lot more than what you were when you started. I want you to think of the repeaters as any other typical weapon. As in, even though it's a ranged weapon, you want to be up close, because the further you are away from the behemoth, the less damage you will do. And if you reload when you're next to the behemoth, again, you're going to get those empowering abilities, and those empowering abilities, they really can change the way you actually go through a hunt by doing things like with the Salvos Chamber. You get a 3 missile spread. I call it a tri-burst. It's amazing. So you already have 1 missile that's doing 400, so now you have 2 more missiles on top of that, which is amazing. This Captain's Grip, which is the reason why it's hands down the best grip, is the fact that when you have the empowered status, you're going to grant your teammates that same buff, and that goes a very long way. Now we have a list of mods, and these are particularly up to you, but if I was to say anything, guys, I would say base your mod off the playstyle that you're using when using the repeaters. Of course, all of them are, you're shooting with the repeaters, but there's many ways you can shoot to your advantage. Capacitive magazine is really good. Extraction catalyst is my favorite, in all honesty. And that's based off my builds. My builds, I typically use evasion a lot. So if you are using things like evasion, where it gives you a bigger dodge window, it only makes sense to have an ability cooldown reduction to use your abilities more often when you dodge, because hey, you got a bigger dodge window, so you're probably going to be able to hit that dodge successfully. But there are other really awesome things as well. Lucky Magazine is a standout, especially when combining Lucky Magazine with other damage related perks. You can really get some good things out of that. And let's move on to the prisms. There are, in my opinion, not a lot of these prisms are that great, but Stoneheart Prism is my favorite, hands down. I'm more of a proponent of safety and support, but again, I would highly suggest you base your prisms off of your particular playstyles. I think Stoneheart Prism works very well for safety and support, but then when we look at something like Serum Prism, what I'm using right now, it's really good. It'll help you out for damage as well as being able to just lay down constant damage. It's really great. So that's some of the more important things, is to understand your playstyle, and if you haven't got the build pieces yet, work your way towards those. If you know you are a repeater player, I highly suggest you primarily focus on putting your resources on upgrading your repeater parts, and then secondarily use your resources on developing your armor, because what you don't want to do is use resources on pieces for armor that you're not going to use on a repeater build, right? A key thing that must be noted, you can't run when you have your repeaters out, but you also don't really need stamina. So consider that and keep that in mind when actually going through and doing so. So what I am going to do right now, I'm going to hop into a private hunt for Lesser Nasher, and we're going to use this as a training experience, and I'm going to talk to you guys about some significant things that we needed to point out in the hunt, and I want you guys to actually see the range in which we're going to be at, so everyone understands how it actually operates properly. Alright guys, so some things I want to point out. When you're using the repeaters, of course, you want to be up close. You have your reticle here, it actually fires in 2 ways. You have a red that you guys see here, and if I move further and further back, I gotta get far back. See, that's white. Oh my god, I'm so close. So if I move further back, our reticle is white. This means you're way too far. There's damage fallout that's happening there. If it's red, just know the target is gonna be dead. And let's talk about the empowering state of the abilities, just so you guys are aware. When you're playing on console and you actually get an empower reload, you'll know, because you'll get this little aura on your guns, so like a whitish blue kind of aura. And then on top of that, if you look at your abilities, they're gonna like crackle a little bit. You're gonna get that change in the animation above your abilities. When you do things like that, you get that empower state, which is great for doing damage. So one thing we have is our Salvos Chamber. When it's not empowered, it's a single blast. Boom. And when it your throwable isn't empowered. It's just one sword, signifying that you are the only person that's going to get that buff for the attack speed, which you can see is very, very noticeable. I've talked about this before, but a good note to note on the repeaters is that the faster your attack speed is, the faster you actually reload. So you can actually do some very, very powerful things when it comes to rapid fire builds. Now, another thing that I wanted to address is showing you guys what the actual empowered abilities look like. We have empowered, so I'm going to show you what the empowered tri-burst looks like. Boom. It's 3 bursts as a whole. We throw that out, we get 3 swords. That shows that the buff is actually going to affect your entire teammates. So it's really, really nice when it comes to actually going through and doing damage. The biggest things people need to be aware of is your effective range. The effective range is within the red crosshair. If you're within the red crosshair, then you are A-okay. So just be sure to constantly always be aware of your surroundings. Stay within the red crosshairs. You don't want to go too far back and miss out on that damage. And you always want to reload within range. If you can reload within range, if you can stay within the red crosshair, then you'll be fine. So those are just some of the things that I wanted to talk about regarding the repeaters. And hopefully I gave you guys some helpful tips and advice on things to avoid when it comes down to your equipment. And hopefully I kind of showed you guys how to properly run the repeaters to maximize your damage output. With that being said, this sailor be out in the open ocean. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.